Welcome everyone to our online forum, Education for All, No Child Left Out of School. My name is Victor Reyes, Communications and Outreach Manager of the Jesuit Forum for Social Faith and Justice. The Jesuit Forum is located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. This land is protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Takaronto is home to many indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to work on this land. And speaking of work, the Jesuit Forum strives to engage all peoples of all faiths and backgrounds in reflection and discernment on the social realities and issues of our time. We employ listening circles for personal and communal reflection. And after tonight's presentations, we will break out into small groups to reflect and share our thoughts with one another. And the issue at hand for tonight is this. Some children in Alberta are being denied access to education because of their parents' precarious immigration status. Given that various international conventions recognize that access to education is a fundamental human right, why is this happening in Alberta? What are the arguments from both sides? Now, to begin to unpack this multi-layered issue, I'd like to introduce and welcome our partner for this online forum, Whitney Haynes, Executive Director of the Alberta Workers Association for Research and Education. Welcome, Whitney, and over to you.
Thank you, Victor, and welcome everyone. I also want to do a land acknowledgement for Alberta here, where this land has been welcoming guests for tens of thousands of years on Treaty 6 territory, the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Anishinaabe, Inuit, and many others. And we recognize that the displacement and cultural genocide of the Indigenous peoples of Treaty 6 territory is also linked to the displacement of poor Indigenous and racialized people from the global South that are forced to leave their homelands due to the theft and control of land and people for the purpose of profit by powerful rich people and countries. And may we are all connected. May we work together to acknowledge our interlinked struggles and relationship to each other and the lands from where we were born. Welcome everyone. The speakers today are going to include myself. We also have Carlos and Ariana here, who are going to share their personal stories of struggling to attend school. But before that, we have Hugo Ducharme, who is the coordinator of the refugee sponsorship at Jesuit Refugee Service Canada, and he is going to discuss global migratory patterns and why people come to Canada.
Thank you very much, Whitney, for this presentation. And thank you to have me to discuss with you about all these migrant patterns. I will share a little PowerPoint to help you to follow my short presentation. Everyone can see my screen now, or? Perfect. We will start with few statistics about immigration in Canada and in Alberta too. You know, Alberta is around 5 million people, are 6.6% of the Canadian population. Canada will come more than 480,000 permanent residents in 2024, included 60,000 in Alberta, 12.46% of the total. Canada had approximately 3 million of 3 million non-permanent residents, and it's estimated that there are between 100,000 and 1 million undocumented immigrants in Canada. And why the people leave their countries? That can be for many reasons, and it's just a short list of them. One of the elements that more obvious is fleeing a dictatorship or an authoritarian regime. Example, people from Eritrea, then we see in Canada, most of those people have fled to this kind of regime. We have Ukrainians now for 3 years that fly a war, an invasion from Russia, but we are Syrians that live under a civil war for years, and many come to Canada too. Many need protection because they live under the gang violence. IT is a good example of that. We see many people fly the violence of the gang in Port-au-Prince. When I talk of political opposition, is specifically the fact in many countries, government combat the political opposition and make segregation for those people, push them to leave the country for their life. Many countries actually have issues around the religious minority that live under persecution, and is more than we think. Christian in Syria, many minorities like Ismaili in Afghanistan. That's all kind of difficulty they can live. Other person that was persecuted is LGBTQA people that have to leave their country to be sure they don't put in jail or killed by their own family because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Many countries don't protect women from domestic violence, and for that reason, many mother, many wife quit their abusive husband and their country for their own safety. And now we can see a new a comeback of a new pattern. Many migrants that live in the United States live in the fear of the loss of their status and to be deported. And for this reason, we will see a bunch of people trying to come to Canada for that reason. When we check the Latin American migration, we have a good example of the plurality of the reason of displacement for each migrant. It's not because a migrant will say in first place, then he come to give a better life to their family. That was the only reason why they leave their country. And when you talk with people, you can and ask question and check, you can see then maybe that woman is victim of gender violence and live under the gang's violence too. I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not a simple situation. Each story is unique. Each story have their own element, their own reason to come to Canada. And one important to know, most migrants will go to a neighboring country. Just a minority will go to a global north country. Coming to Canada is really difficult. It's not simple. First thing, we only have one land border with the United States. And it's really complicated to obtain an entry visa to Canada. And for that we have many barriers for the people to come here. And on the border, we have the safe third country agreement that severely limits the entry by land. And that's really important, more important since 2 or 3 years when the agreement is extended to all the border and not just the port of entry. Some people meet one of the exception of the agreement, but they need to be able to prove it at the border. That means that most people arrive by air at the point of entry with a permanent or a non-permanent residence. They arrive with diverse statuses from all continents. For that, really for all continents, we have African, Congolese, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, etc. You have many Eritreans too, Syrian continue, Afghan, etc. Specifically for Alberta, I see the three most country where the migrants come from is Philippines, India, and China. Many will arrive with the permanent residence via an economical pathway or some of the humanitarian pathways, refugee, family, etc. The other come as student, temporary worker. Many of the temporary workers are in really precarious situation because it's a kind of modern slavery, particularly in the farm. And we have visitors too. Since the extension of the STCA, most refugee claims are made at the airport or within Canada. Is most people without status arrive with a status but lost it for diverse reasons. Maybe the refugee claim is rejected and they are in limbo because they cannot depose a humanitarian demand now. They have those people then are not accept but cannot return to their countries because they are in the list of countries, then Canada don't send people. Other reasons, cessation of status, etc., etc. Many reasons, each story is different. And if Bill C2 is adopted, the new real security bill that the government proposed at the House of we will have more undocumented migrants because we will have more possibility of ineligibility for asylum seeker. Now we'll talk a little bit of few challenges then the migrants can live in Canada. The first one is obviously the linguistic barrier. Not all of them speak English or French fluently, depending where they arrive, and they have to learn the language. That's not an easy thing. Access to technology and computer literacy is another issue that we see more and more. it's not all the migrants that have a computer, that have access to internet. Usually that's limited to the cell phone. And imagine to fill out the Immigration Canada forms on the cell phone. That's not an easy thing, but that's really a barrier. And another barrier is the access to services. And that is really different depending on the status that the migrants have and the province where they live. We see many problems with legal aid. The under legal aid level, many of the temporary um, status don't give access to legal aid. The undocumented can have access to legal aid, part of them. And for those that have access, the needs is bigger than the service that provided by the province. Healthcare, many migrants don't have access to the provincial system, and sometimes they have access, like refugee claimants have access to some insurance by the federal government, but it's really difficult for them be to obtain the access they're supposed to have. And for many of them, they don't have any access to healthcare. Education, we will talk about it today, and we have many issues with care services too. I think I make all the points I want today. If we have any question, we will have a Q&A later. Thank you to listen me.
I'm gonna thanks so much, Hugo. I'm gonna jump in now and share our first video to really ground us on why we're here today.
Maybe, Hugo, you need to stop sharing your screen. Thank you.
The only dream I have at the moment is that my siblings can go to school. I was most of the time worried that they weren't gonna go to school anymore, if they were gonna go to a new school, because when they got kicked out, my mom started trying to find a new school for them, but all of the school rejected them. So I felt really bad for my siblings. I knew it was hard for them. I'm 13, my brother's 11, my sister is 7, my other sister is 5. Yeah, my siblings have talked to me about, they have asked me how my school is, they have asked me how the kids at my school is. Sometimes they ask to see my school or to just show them videos of events that happen in my school, and they really like it when I tell them stuff about my school, and I do think they really want to go to school. A typical day in my siblings' life would be they wake up pretty late since they don't go to school, so their sleep schedule is really bad. They probably wake up at 2 p.m. they don't really do a lot through the day. I try to get them to maybe read a book or do something, like make them play outside, but they mostly stay at home, maybe watching TV or staying at looking at their phone. This isn't just damaging their education, this is also damaging their mental health, like their way to socialize. I try to help them. I try to help my siblings with maybe teach them math or maybe tell them to read some books. I do feel like it's a big responsibility with helping my siblings with something that someone else should be teaching them, like teachers. They should be at school instead of me teaching them. The Education4All, the campaign I'm in, it's helping a lot to my siblings. I've been giving a few speeches in the school board, and I think it's helping. This isn't really something that will happen soon. Like, I know maybe my siblings will take a few months or maybe more longer to get to school, so it hurts me a lot. And it also kind of hurts me that they don't really know what's happening with our situation. Before I joined the campaign, I was a bit nervous to give like speeches mostly, but I knew that a lot of kids will identify with my situation and they will feel hurt. I think it's important for people to know about this because a lot of people don't know about it, and they have to know that education is a right, and this isn't the kids' fault, neither their parents, because the parents were the ones who had to go to another country, maybe because they had problems in their home country and they had to go to a new country to search for like a better future, and the kids had no choice in that.
Okay, so I am going to turn this over to Ariana, who is here.
Hi, hello everyone. Today I want to talk about the Education4All campaign I'm in, and it's about fighting for the right of every child to go to school, no matter where they were born or what papers they have. There are many undocumented kids in Canada who can't go to school because of their status, but it's not their fault. They didn't choose to come here. Their parents brought them hoping for a better life, but now they're the ones being punished for something they couldn't control. Education is so important because it gives kids a chance to build a future. It helps them learn, find their passions, and believe in themselves. When undocumented kids are kept out of school, they lose more than just lessons. They lose hope, friends, and a place where they can feel safe and included. Without school, they can feel stuck and invisible. But with education, they can dream, grow, and help their families and communities. When we allow every child to learn, we make our country stronger and more fair. Every child deserves a chance to learn, no matter the status, because education isn't a privilege, it's a human right. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ariana. I'm going to share a short presentation just about the situation here in Alberta, and then I'll get Carlos to also share his story. So just sharing my screen. So I work with an organization called AWARE, the Alberta Workers Association for Research and Education. And we're part of an international alliance called the International Migrants Alliance. And it's a global alliance of organizations that are led by grassroots migrants, refugees, and displaced peoples. And this is the campaign that they have here in Canada right now. So we heard Ariana's story. I want to reiterate that how you do become undocumented in Canada for anyone who isn't aware. And as Hugo said, it's usually a case where a temporary visa has expired. So you could come here as an international student, for example, and you can't afford to continue paying your student fees. You could be recruited by an institution that doesn't offer permanent residency after graduating. We've had several scams in Alberta where people have paid $20,000 a year, assuming that they'll get PR in the end, and the institution collects all this money, and then they do not qualify. You could have mental or physical health issues that could prevent you from completing your studies. There's a lot of work done now on education trafficking, bringing in students from poor countries to pay a lot of money in rich countries for the business of education. You can also come here as a tourist, but we're promised through a recruiter that you are going to get permanent residency. And some people we get here this is part of the labor trafficking is they thought they were going to get permanent residency. They've sold everything that they had in their home country, and they everything was a lie, and the agent had received a lot of profit in the end. And then we have the temporary foreign worker program. So here, maybe you couldn't complete the work requirements to apply for PR. We've had several cases of women that get pregnant and then you can't complete 2 years of work in order to apply. Or the requirements for permanent residency might have changed. And as you've probably noticed in the last year, even the Canadian government will make changes to the requirements for PR every couple months. And so people come here with an assumption that they can get PR, but then everything changes after they've arrived. You can also be a denied refugee claimant. So you've come here as a refugee, but Canada has decided that they believe it is safe for you to return to your country, but you are too scared to go back. And so you stay here with, in a very difficult circumstance because of your safety. There are unauthorized border crossings. We're not really seeing this yet, but usually what we're seeing are just temporary visas that have expired. I always want to state that what it means to have no status or being undocumented, we should never use the word illegal. We never say anyone is ever illegal because it implies a criminality. Person cannot be illegal because migration is not a crime. It is a criminalization of poor people in general, people that are coming from poor countries. It's very discriminatory and it can deny people their rights. And so we really want to push people to think why people felt forced to leave their home country in the first place, instead of calling them illegal or a criminal. So today we're specifically talking about education and how does immigration status affect education. So it can create a lot of fear of students, of telling anyone of your situation at home, not knowing who you could ask for help. There's stories of students being scared that they're being followed to school by the police. And of course, there's the fear of being removed from school. There's a lot of stress at home where it's difficult to meet basic needs, and difficult knowing who you can trust. And this all leads to this othering and this feeling like you do not belong, where you can be forcibly removed or refuse to go to school, and you become quite isolated. So the timeline in Alberta for this campaign. So back in fall 2023, that's when we first learned of Ariana's siblings getting kicked out of school. Then we sent a lot of meetings and emails to the Edmonton Public School Board, the Edmonton Catholic School Board, and the provincial government. And there was no change. We had more kids getting removed, and so we started to research what was happening. We held a conference to start raising awareness and build a coalition. And then in the fall of 2024, we were able to really pressure the Edmonton Public School Board to take action. So the kids were removed, Ariana's siblings and Carlos, in particular, they've been removed from Catholic schools. But the Catholic School Board, unfortunately, would not meet with us. We've had emails from them, but they wouldn't let us speak with them or behind closed doors or in public. However, the public school board did let us meet with them. And so we've started working with them. And I have some of their responses I'm going to share after this. We also have a petition that we're trying to change the Education Act here in Alberta. And the Edmonton Public School Board is trying to also support that petition. And not the petition itself, but they're supporting undocumented kids to go to school, and they're asking the province to try to allow that to happen. And now we are really just raising awareness as much as possible of the issue to get more voices involved. My screen is not moving forward. There. So just so you're aware, the Education Act in Alberta is very discriminatory based on immigration status. So it does state that every person who can enroll in school if they are a resident of Alberta and who has a parent who is a resident of Canada. And resident means that you're lawfully entitled to be or to remain in Canada. So this is the law that they are following here in Alberta. There is another section of the Education Act that we're trying to use when we talk with the school boards, where it states that a board may charge tuition fees for anyone who is not a resident student. And the board can decide the amount of that tuition fee. So we're trying to get the school boards to just charge $1 for these kids, but they will not agree to do this. So I just want to go through some of the government responses. So we did reach out to several trustees of the Edmonton Public School Board and Catholic School Board, but no one was able to come today. We also reached out to the Minister of Education in Alberta, who declined. We reached out to the education critic, the opposition, who didn't respond. And we also reached out at the federal level to a local MP here who wasn't able to join us. So I'm going to try to put their responses here that I've been able to collect from emails and media. So, like I said, from the Edmonton Catholic School Board, we did have some emails back and forth, but no one would agree to meet with us. They did state that they want to follow the requirements of immigration and Alberta education, like I've shared with you. So they're following the law for accepting students into schools, but they work with families to assist in the immigration process. We did request to formally speak to their board, but we were denied. We had a teacher request to speak to them as a constituent, but she was also denied. With the Edmonton Public School Board, we were able to meet with them several times in private as well as public. Ariana has given several speeches to them. And now they have passed a motion to advocate to allow children without status to attend school. There are some news statements here that I was thinking I could share just to make sure that everyone gets the proper government response. So it's not just my words here. So I'm just going to go to this CBC article that from at the end of May. And this is about how the Edmonton Public School Board wants Alberta to guarantee children a right to attend school. And there are some quotes here from different levels of government. So, for example, one of the Edmonton Public School Board trustees have said, it doesn't matter what decisions parents have made, we have to do everything we can to see those kids are in school. And then if I go down here, there's a response from the minister and the Catholic School Board. So this is the minister here. But here's in a statement, the Edmonton Catholic School Board person has said access to education for undocumented students is a complex and sensitive issue. And she said the board will welcome students to the fullest extent allowed by provincial law. And they didn't answer whether they will advocate for change. And the Minister of Education has said funding, in a statement sent Tuesday, Minister said funding schooling for children from outside Canada aims to balance fiscal responsibility and compassion. Alberta's criteria for funding education for newcomers is intended to be open and generous, and most children are eligible for a funded education in the province. He said the only instance a child would not have funded education is when they arrive in Alberta as a tourist or a visitor. We know that that's not true because we have children that have arrived as refugee claimants and as temporary foreign workers and under international students, and they cannot go to school. So I'm just gonna go back here. We did receive another response from the provincial government to one of our advocates who emailed asking about if children can go to school. And this is the response that they got from the ministry, saying that Alberta Education does not provide funding for students who are not lawfully admitted to Canada or permitted to remain. While school authorities may choose to enroll these students, they do so without provincial funding. And Alberta's approach aims to balance compassion for newcomers with fiscal responsibility to taxpayers. Most foreign children, including those of temporary residents and refugee claimants, already qualify for funded education. Expanding eligibility to include undocumented students could create expectations for broader access to publicly funded education, including among international families who would otherwise be required to pay tuition. And this could affect system sustainability, enrollment management, and public perceptions of fairness. And they said, while international human rights instruments affirm every child's right to education, Alberta's legislation distinguishes between access to education and access to publicly funded education. So I just want to provide their responses and yeah, I'll just leave it at that for everyone to digest. So what is being done in other school districts and provinces across Canada? So there are sanctuary school policies all across BC where children are allowed to go to school if they've lost their immigration status. And they also go to the extent where they're not going to share information with federal immigration authorities in order to protect the kids' safety in the school. They state that they do this because they believe every child deserves to receive support, no matter what life circumstances brought them to live in our communities. On the other side of Canada, in Ontario, their Education Act actually explicitly states that any person who is entitled to be admitted um, shall not be refused admission because the person or person's parent is unlawfully in Canada. So they specifically do not want to refuse children at all. So these are the policies that we want here in Alberta. And I think it's also important to state that, when people lose their immigration status, they often regain it. They may not have status for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but after some time, they're able to get their applications approved. The immigration system does take a long time. And so we have children that have a gap in their education until they do get that permanent residency, which is very difficult. So what are we doing now in Alberta to support children? So we're raising awareness as much as possible. That's what we are doing right now. So we've gone to the media. We're doing many different forums and presentations. We have a petition to change the Education Act here to allow all children to go to school. But this should be tabled at the end of October. We're working on a short film to raise awareness. We are exploring legal avenues. And now we're at a point where we really have to find a way to start a school on our own, funded by the community and grassroots initiatives and volunteers. We're looking at just meeting once a week right now to try to get the kids some support. So what can you do? So you can collect petition signatures. These do need to be Alberta residents, though, for anyone who signs the petition. School boards, we're trying to connect with them. If you know anyone who's able to connect with particularly the Edmonton Catholic School Board, because we haven't been able to build a relationship with them. We want to connect with principals and teachers. Please share our website. These videos are on our website. And you can also organize a presentation or a film showing with your church or organization. And join our email list or our coalition. So we're really asking for everyone to speak out. That is the end of the presentation. I'm just going to now share Carlos's video, so then Carlos can share his story.
My name.
I just want to. If I shared that properly, so I want to make sure I shared the sound.
We heard it initially.
Okay, good.
My name is Carlos Daniel, or you can call me Carlos. I am 11 years old. I was born in Antigua, Aruba. Yeah, I was born in Antigua, Aruba. I don't like it. Like it's really hard for me to say. Yes, I like my school because I made a lot of friends, and I like to hang out with people, and we like to share snacks and all of that. So yeah. When I was in grade 6, we went to a field trip. Yeah, we went to a field trip, and after when it was the end of the day, the teacher told me I can't go to school. I was really sad. And my friends too. The teacher only said I can come to visit, and yeah. I can't go to school because I didn't have a passport. So yeah.
And did your mom and dad talk to the school after that?
Yeah. do you miss the most from school? Playing soccer with my friends. Why don't we take a little break here? For me, like for me, I can't go to school. I can't leave my house that much, and I can't go go nowhere, and that's all it. I like to hang out with my family. Yeah, my family, I like to hang out with them. And sometimes I like to play by myself with my friends that like not at school. They're like at home. I like to play with them too. To my teachers, I missed them a lot. And I had fun hanging out with them. And going to places with them.
My name is Jeremiah.
And how old are you?
I am 7. I will tell them, can you like tell the president to put him back in school? Thomas is gonna be in school because he be nice and he be nice to other people.
I hope and wait. I hope in my next school I can hang out with my new friends. And yeah. That's all it.
Okay, now, Carlos, are you there?
We're gonna talk about what happens when you have no school. When you have no school, you can get dumber. You can lose friends. You can lose a lot of stuff that you were hoping for life. And it's not fair that you don't go to. It's not fair that you cannot go to school. It's because your friend, let's say if your friends wants to play for you, you can't play for your friends that much because you can't go to school or they have something to do, like they have to do math, or they have to go places or somewhere you cannot play with them, and your friends will miss you a lot, and it's when me hearing my little brother go to school. It makes me happy that he goes to school. He's learning stuff. And for me, I can't go to school, so I always tell him to keep up his work. And the last thing is, we have to go to school for us to be smarter for our life when we grow up. Yeah, that's all that I have to say.
Okay, thank you so much, Carlos.
Hello, everyone. I think this is where I come in. My name is Trevor Scott. I'm the director of the Jesuit Forum for Social Faith and Justice, one of the co-sponsors of this webinar. And we're going to move in a different direction now. But first of all, just thank you, Carlos, and Ariana and Whitney and Hugo for your initial input, and particularly Carlos and Ariana. I know this can be difficult to share how difficult that can be, not being able to go to school. So thank you especially to Carlos and Ariana for being with us in this brave way. And of course for Whitney and Hugo as well for shedding some background on the context of the situation of children being denied education, in particular in Alberta. One of the characteristics of coming together in this way, like in this forum-like setting sponsored by the Jesuit Forum, is having small group conversations. So we're going to enter into small groups in a moment. But before we do in small group conversation, before we do that, is there any initial questions that you may have for Hugo, for Whitney, or for Ariana and Carlos? Nothing to, how do I say it? Nothing to involve. I'm mindful of time, and maybe just one or two initial questions, maybe more for clarity. And then we'll go into small groups, and then we'll come back into a plenary before a conclusion at 8:30. And then if there's any more not substantive questions, but more involved questions beyond clarity. But is just there any initial clarifying questions that you would have for our presenters before we break up into small groups and reflect on two questions that I will voice in a moment? Any clarifying questions? You just raise your hand. And yes, Pat?
Has the policy of Edmonton or Alberta schools always had this Education Act piece where undocumented individuals and their children are not allowed, or has that been a new policy that has been put in place in recent years?
So we are researching that right now. We've since I've been here and the work that our organization has done, we've never experienced in the last 12 years anyone that's been kicked out of school. They've only started getting kicked out 2 years ago. The new Education Act came in 2019, which really discriminated based on being entitled to be admitted and to remain in Canada as a resident. I think the previous School Act said entitled to be admitted into Canada. So now it seems the wording has changed to be admitted and to be lawfully remain. But I'm not a lawyer, and so we're still trying to get some of this research. And if that's also another question. If anyone has any lawyers that they're connected to that could help us, that would be great. But just based on our grassroots work, this has never happened before. It's just in the last 2 years.
Thank you, Pat. Whitney, Norbert.
Well, actually, Whitney, you started talking about my question. Actually, I was just wondering if there has been any legal action done at this point or started.
So there's one lawyer in Edmonton who is willing to take this case on, but he has stated that if he loses, then the families would have to pay up to $20,000 each. So he would do it for free, except for if he loses, then he can't take on that funding. And so that's very stressful. We've I did have a conversation with a lawyer in Toronto, who spoke about it, but then she also didn't know if it was worth taking on the case because the length of time that this would take in court could be up to 5 years. And she's like, if your main point is to get the kids back into school and it's not about money, then you might go to court for 5 years, but then the government could use the notwithstanding clause, which they all keep threatening to do. And so is that worth it? And so I haven't heard back from her. We are in touch with the Canadian Association of Refugee Lawyers, and we're waiting to hear back from them. I haven't had a meeting with them yet. And that's where we're at. We are hoping that, the Education Act could be taken to court as a human rights issue based on discrimination. But yeah, it's complicated.
Thank you, Robert. Whitney. Any other questions?
Trevor, there is a question in the chat box.
Oh, how many children are unable to access education at the moment in Alberta?
This is a very difficult question for us to answer because a lot of families are too scared to come forward, and it takes a lot of time to build trust with them. A year ago, we had about 20 kids that we knew about across the province. Right, but then some of them end up migrating, right, and are leaving the country, or some of them get permanent residency, right, and so their immigration status is always changing. Right now, we know of, I think, 4 kids in Calgary and 10 in Edmonton, but I don't have the updates from the rural areas. And of course, this is very small numbers because we don't have, it's very hard to gain trust.
Yeah. And there's an
Yeah,
additional question. If you can see it in the chat, Whitney. Why is the Catholic School Board? Yeah.
So why is the Catholic School Board not cooperating? We don't know. We're yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Mm-hmm. We can speculate in some ways, but that's not worth doing it. Yeah, it's just mere speculation. Yeah. Well, good. Thank you for your questions. And we'll come back to the plenary, and if you have any additional questions after our small group conversations. And I think we're all set technically. And just a word about small group conversation. They will be, I'm not sure how many we are, maybe 2, maybe 3. We'll find out in a moment. But they will be facilitated. So there's a kind of a designated facilitator, and that person will kind of get things flowing. And it's just a small group. It's like, imagine we're in a room together and we're going around in circles. So the first person to begin, and then we'll just kind of go, and it's a listening. It's not a conversation so much, though it's small group conversation, but it's structured conversation. So we're just speaking in a circle, and we're giving each other the space, about 2 or 3 minutes, to speak on each of the 2 questions that we have in the little amount of time we have. So maybe like 2 minutes for each question to reflect upon. And we're just listening to the speaker, and then we move forward. And our first question is, the first round of questions is, there they are in the chat. But what are your initial impressions? What struck you from our presentation, from Ariana and Carlos, and the background, the context from Hugo and Whitney? What moved you? What struck you? What resonated with you? And we'll go around in one circle on that question. And then the second question, hopefully we'll have time, is how can we respond to the situation? What do you feel that you can, how you can respond? If you're not from Alberta, you really can't sign the petition, but maybe you can promote the petition to folks in Alberta. But what are other things? How are you moved to act in some way? from wherever you are in the country. So those would be the two questions.